Hey everybody, it's Brant Frost. I'm here with another interview with one of the candidates who's running for an officer position with the Georgia Republican Party today. Alice OLenick is with us, and she's running for first vice chair of the Georgia Republican Party. And right before we started recording, Alice, you were talking about how you've been on the Gwynet Board of Elections now for over a decade. So you've seen what is it now, two or three methods of doing elections or more that we've been having now in the state of Georgia. Tell us about that.
Well, when I first came onto the board, and I've been appointed by five different chairmen of Gwinnett County, so I've never really had to run for office before this one. I was always appointed on my merits, which I was very happy that they did reappoint me. But when I first came on, there were DRE machines, and then we went to the Dominion. Well, then we went through the 2020, what I'll call a debacle of brand new machines just getting delivered, not having time for training on the machines, drop boxes being put out, an election that was contentious, lawyers and recounts and everything that was going on in 2020, and then all the way up until now. So now people are pushing for paper ballots, which is fine by me. Um, we'll just have to figure out how to count them quickly. And so we spent all that money and all that time on new machines. And then if we get a different Secretary of State, we don't know what'll happen with the machines. So
Yeah, I've heard the names Tim Fleming, who used to work for Governor Kemp, mentioned as a candidate. I've also heard Kelvin King's name mentioned. Who else have you heard on the Republican side?
Gabe Sterling, I heard
Oh yeah.
he wants to be Secretary of State, but that's all I've heard.
I'm sure the folks watching this would just love to have Brad Raffensperger's spokesman as as the next Secretary of State. I'm sure they're just leaping for joy about that prospect.
I think the people of Georgia want someone else, someone that has not been there for the past few years.
Exactly. I'm being facetious, of course, about
Yeah,
that.
I understand. I, as an elections board member, um, would like to have different people in that spot, you know.
I've heard Fleming, Sterling, and Kelvin King. Of the three of them, I think definitely I'd prefer Kelvin of those three to the other two in that role. That would be pretty cool. When
I
you
would
first
just go ahead.
go
I
ahead.
would just want to have someone as Secretary of State that actually is going to accept the opinions of every 156 counties, election supervisors and boards to see what they need, not just tell me what I need.
Diversity across the state in terms of the issues that each county is facing. And when you were first on the Gwinnett board, Brian Kemp was Secretary of State. We used Diebold machines. Then in the late 20 teens, we switched over to the Dominion system. Then after the 2020 debacle, we changed several things. What has changed since 2020? Since you've been here the whole time, one of the advantages in just the perspective, one of the interesting things about your perspective, Alice, is that you have been in office now for over a decade in this role. Most of the people coming to the convention will have gotten involved within the last 4 years, 80% or more. So their frame of reference is somewhat less broad than yours. What has changed since 2020 to compare to 2024 in the way elections are run? What do you see as some of the significant noteworthy changes?
Okay, in 2019 and early 2020, after reading election law, I knew once we started talking about ballot drop boxes, et cetera, that there were a lot of holes or weak spots in our legislation for the code, election code. That's what it's called. After the 2020 election in January 2021, an election task force by the Republican Party was started, of which I was one of the people that are on that. I'm still part of the election task force that sit down and actually write legislation and then see what the legislators would be willing to take up into a bill. Um, we need more done. I know this year was disappointing with election bills. But I think
Because the House bill didn't get passed in the Senate. For the folks who weren't following it, that's what you're talking about, right? The House bill
actually the Senate convened early before 11:59.
adjourned
So
early. Yeah, you mean adjourned,
adjourned,
right? They adjourned
yeah,
early,
they
and we
didn't,
didn't get a vote.
right,
We
they
didn't get a vote
adjourned,
on the House,
right.
which is a shame
So
because the Senate bill, the Senate is usually the more conservative body. They have usually been taking the lead on these issues or just any issues. You can usually count on the Senate to be the more conservative body. This goes back to at least the 90s. But in this case, it was the House that the Senate could have agreed to the House bill or amended it, or could have at least agreed to it and sent it to the governor's desk. But apparently they adjourned early, which is unfortunate.
so
So,
it's on the table. It can be brought up again next year. I
oh,
mean,
I'm
it,
sure it will be because the lieutenant governor's running for governor.
but whether the legislature is going to have the acumen to actually change election law in a year where we have such big offices to fill, I don't know. But you asked me what was significant. In 21, the changes that were made, Senate Bill, what was it, 202? Did make some changes, and then we made some more changes last year. There's more that needs to be done. I would prioritize a few things like, can we define a residence? Because that's always a point of contention between Republicans and Democrats of, yeah, you might sleep there, but it's a Walmart, so you can't be registered to vote there. So we need a more definite answer of what your habitat, your residence actually is. We also need a little more guidance from the state elections board and maybe in law of challenges of, because right now it takes 8 to 9 years to remove somebody from the voter rolls. And and just an act of asking for an absentee ballot takes you from inactive to active all over again. Just renewing your driver's license moves you from inactive to active because they say that's contact with the elections office. It's not contact with the elections office, it's contact with driver services. So things like that need to be changed. And that would make my job and the job of other board members much easier, let's put it that way, or smoother. So God bless you. So
Did I see right that in 2024, there were over 100,000 people who voted absentee in 2020 who did not vote at all in 2024? I believe Josh McCoon was telling me that the other day that there were over 100,000 people statewide who voted absentee in 2020 and didn't vote at all in 2024 by any means.
well, there was a lot of funny business in 2020 because we had that special jungle primary for Senate on January 5th, 2021. And we, at that time, we allowed people to register to vote in December. So I think there was a lot of push to get people registered to vote in Georgia to vote in that January election against David Perdue. And then there,
Leffler, yeah. But this was in the November election. I think, if I remember right, McCoon was saying that there was over 100,000 people who voted absentee and didn't vote at all in 2024, but they voted absentee in 2020. The absence of those voters, of those votes rather, those ballots, was a critical factor in the election. If you remember, the early vote numbers here in Georgia were looking really, really good. They were looking almost, too good to be true. They were very encouraging. You remember almost from the first day of early voting was we were seeing the turnout numbers and how the Democrat turnout, early voter turnout was really low in the Democrat counties compared to Republican counties, and how we continued to lead throughout the whole process. And you remember the big rally that Trump did here with Tucker and
yeah,
up in the north side. I remember by that point, a lot of us were saying, unless some horrible mistake happens or some massive fraud, we're going to win Georgia. I mean, the trajectory was looking that good at that point that we were feeling very optimistic. But yeah, it goes to show you what 4 years and some changes to the election law will do. And turning
Well,
to
it
your,
wasn't
yeah,
even change of election law then. It was ballot drop boxes on the corner with no video, no lights, no anything on them. So, my fear at that point wasn't stuffing the ballot box or whatever, was what happens if someone sets one of them on fire? So you don't know who put a absentee ballot in there and now they're gone. So, but
remember how the Democrats tried to open Fulton County for the and on the weekend before the election for absentee ballots, and then said they wouldn't let us in there, and then and then McCoon and Watley and Laura Trump got on it. Next thing you know, they changed their mind, like, oh, we were just kidding. Of course we'll let everybody in. And then of course, I think it was just 600 or something votes were collected in total that whole weekend. And
right.
virtually no votes were collected at that
Because
point.
they were then being watched. But well, in Gwinnett County, we also allowed every early voting location, even if they didn't have a ballot drop box, to collect absentee ballots, which I was screaming that it was unlawful. But I didn't win that battle. So, but
Well, it's not illegal if Democrats want to do it. See, that's the way, you got to remember that's the way the rules operate. There are rules are for Republicans. Democrats operate under a special dispensation.
I won't comment on that because of what I do. But yeah, so
So turning to so let's talk about the first vice chair race. You're running for that. That race, that role is a, support and advisory role. You have a vote on the state committee and the executive committee by virtue of it. But in terms of like your responsibilities and authorities, it's largely assigned by the chairman. So before I talk to you about, what role you'd hope to play with the chairman, what would you hope to do yourself within those limitations?
well, the job description for the first vice chair is pretty weak. It's basically is if the chairman can't fulfill his duties, you're going to step up and just do whatever the chairman wants you to. I really would like to just say I'm going to add to that. I'm not going to just hold to that. I have committed to when I'm on, let's say, on the stump talking to county parties and Republican women groups and district groups or whatever. I'm committed to going county by county, congressional district by congressional district to actually help them try to find those 2,663,000 Donald Trump votes because we don't know who those people are. We have no clue. I would seriously doubt we know 500,000 reliable Republican votes. So I need to, as a first vice chair, I have committed to county chairs that I will come and I will hold their hand and I will help them in what they need. They know their voters. I don't know what the voters of South Georgia really want. I know what the metro areas want. The mountain areas, I'm not sure. But I want to be a person that will actually say, yes, you're valued, and yes, I know you're here. What are you having a problem with? How can I solve it? And there's lots of groups in the 24 election. Um, um, Catherine, I forget her last name, from North Georgia. Catherine James, she had a USA program, which was very good. And she came in and she tried to train the county party.
Yeah,
How, how
United Saves America.
that's
Her
it.
effort. Yeah,
United
her
States
effort.
of
Yeah.
America.
So
Um,
you think to do that regarding elections, to be able to offer assistance to county parties if they had issues with their
but
board of elections, with your experience in that?
in a little different way than yes, to help them if they have a problem with challenges or with their board of elections. But we always seem to Turning Point does it also. They come in and they say, we're going to train you. In my mind, when you say you're going to train me, it makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. But those counties know what they're doing. They just need help to enhance what they're doing. And the Georgia GOP, and this is why I jumped into the race. I knew after the results of the 24 election and Donald Trump only winning by 115,000 odd votes, I knew that what we were going to have to do was we were going to have to find every single like-minded conservative to vote for Senate, governor, all of our constitutional offices, because people are not as excited about the 26 election as they were for the 24 election. And we don't know who they are. We need to reach out and try to find them. We need to have events. We need to have fundraisers. We need to have just social things in all four quadrants of the state of Georgia. Um,
When you say the margin was kind of tight, are you comparing that to the other swing states, or comparing what are you
no,
comparing
I'm
that
just,
to?
I'm just looking at Georgia. And when I looked at Georgia, Gwinnett County has 643,000 registered voters.
Hmm.
Donald Trump won by 115,000. 115,000 is like three of my precincts. I mean, it's not, he didn't overwhelm the state with votes. And the metro areas may have improved their Republican outcome by 1 to 1.5%. But after looking at all of this, I'm thinking that 1% is really like a Reagan Democrat that voted for a Republican. It's a Trump Democrat that voted for Donald Trump. We need, and there are so many more people in the farming area, the rural area, the suburbs, the mountainous areas that we haven't reached. They're going to vote Republican, but we don't know who they are. And we just have to engage them
Yeah.
at an event. We need to educate them that they are Republicans, even if they don't call themselves Republicans. Most people, especially in your age group, call themselves like a libertarian instead of a Democrat or a Republican.
Well, they used to. They don't call themselves libertarians anymore. That's getting kind of old. Actually, the kind of eccentric politics that Gen Z is dabbling into would be far more either far right or far left than libertarian these
Yeah,
days.
but they're not the 30 and 40-year olds don't really say I'm a Republican or a Democrat. They may always vote Democrat or always vote Republican. We need to find them. We need to educate them that they really are Republicans. Then we have to energize them to get their families, their friends, their churches, their little league coaches, all of them out to vote, and why it's so important to vote for a Republican in the state of Georgia. Because otherwise, if we just sit back, I'm going to tell you for far too long, and I've been involved in the Republican Party for a while, we've stayed in the background. The Republican Party is not out there rah, 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 parading on the streets. We're there, but it's really kind of hard for people to find us. And what are we doing? Especially outside the metro areas. And we need to say, you're needed, you're wanted, we love you, we need you. We're not going to forget about you. Like, when's the last time the Georgia Republican Party sponsored a tractor and a tractor pull? When did they sponsor something at the state fair in Perry? When did we go to a rodeo and have a sign and sponsor a sign that hangs up so people can come up to us, register to vote, get information on their local party? That's what we need to do if we want to keep this state red and not let it turn blue. Because frankly, I'm from New Jersey and I know how hard it is to be a Republican in a navy blue state. And I
Yeah.
don't want to go back to living in a blue state.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons a lot of those things were moved away from is because they were showing diminishing returns. You're familiar with the 60, 70-year trend we've been experiencing of fewer and fewer people engaging in civic activities, and now with the internet and social media basically replacing that. I mean, think about it. When your mother was a young lady, women routinely would have each other over to play bridge, to play cards. Ladies would host dinner parties with their husbands and a few of couples from, their friends. No one does that anymore. Bowling, there's a book called Bowling Alone, which talks about how so few people do things together, where it's bowling leagues, whether it's card playing, anything. Social activity in real life has diminished, has just taken a nosedive over the last few decades. And so
It
it's,
has, but
I think it's,
there are things
but let me
out
ask you about
there.
this. Let me ask you about the election thing. As you see going forward, considering that we overperformed in Georgia compared to what we were expected to do, I know we had a lot of optimistic projections, but the polls showed Trump winning by a point and a half. He won by 2.2. Real Clear Politics had him at 1.4 for average, right, going to election day. He won by 2.2. Considering that nationwide we carried the popular vote by 1.5%. Georgia, which was one of the major, seven top swing states, we won by 2%, 2.2%. So we outperformed, since Georgia's kind of a microcosm of the national election, we outperformed our national average here and our projected average. And Kemp, of course, way overperformed in 2022. What do you think is the reason why so many, in light of that overperformance, why do you think so many folks feel that the election in Georgia was closer than they think it should have been? What do you think they're basing that off of?
Well, I'm basing it off of 115,000 votes. I mean, the margin, it could be a 2% increase, but that's not a lot for the population of Georgia. I mean, Gwinnett County has 1 million people. Fulton County has a little more than 1 million people. Cobb County is close. It's coming up behind. For the amount of people we now have in Georgia, 115,000 isn't something to sit back and say, okay, we're doing pretty good. Plus, it all depends on those people came out and voted because of the energy and the popularity of Donald Trump.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, Trump won the popular vote by a point and a half, and we say we say we won it was a landslide, and we kind of mean it a little tongue in cheek, but we say 1.5% nationwide, that's a landslide. We win by 2.2% in Georgia, and some folks seem to be getting the impression that, we were just holding on by our fingernails, particularly considering that we swung from Biden officially being certified in 2020, I say that in air quotes, as winning by 12,000 votes. We swing that to us winning by more than 100,000. I'm not sure why we should feel that we underperformed what we should have done. I guess I'm just trying to figure
Oh,
out
now I'm
what
not saying
metric.
we underperformed because we performed what we needed to do. We needed to get Donald Trump to take the state of Georgia. And I'm going to tell you right now, when it was declared that he did take Georgia, I stood up and I woohooed and I clapped, and everyone around me in Gwinnett Election Central was like, "Oh, this is terrible. The world is going to end," because we're a Democrat county. Some people would say, no, we're not, but yeah, we are. And so I was just thrilled because I knew which states to look at to see whether or not, like in 16, I was looking at Pennsylvania. And when the Philadelphia area went for Donald Trump, the suburbs of Philly, I knew that Philadelphia was going to go for Trump and that he would win that night, and he did. What my concern is because it's not a presidential election, and it's not a presidential election where you have a very charismatic um, candidate. We have Senate, governor. If we don't have candidates that are charismatic and energetic and can bring the crowds, a lot of people are not, and statistically, a lot of people don't vote unless it's a presidential election. They vote once every 4 years.
That's true.
And it's kind of easy statewide to take away 115,000 votes. So,
It's
and
close.
that's why I jumped into the race. It's because we have to do something. We have to make an effort to find those 2,600,000 people that voted Republican, but we really don't know who they are.
Yeah,
We know they're here, but we don't know who they are.
and so you're running, and And so you're running to help. Is that your main reason for running, you would say? If someone, as a delegate going to the convention and someone would ask, well, hey, Alice, nice to meet you. Nice to hear about your service on the Gwinnett Board of Elections. That sounds really cool. Thank you for doing that. So why are you running for state vice chair? Why should I vote for you?
Because I'm a doer and I'm going to get work done. And I see where we need to energize the voters and find those like-minded conservatives, whether they call themselves Republican or not, and get them engaged and energized to vote for a Republican and to educate them why having a Republican government in the state of Georgia is beneficial to their lives. I mean, we need to reach out to the moms and dads in the suburbs who are worried about the school system that they're sending their children to. We need to reach out to those farmers who feel like they're just forgotten, that nobody comes down and has a party with them. I mean, we just need to reach more people, and this is why I'm running. I think I can do that. I can bring that to the table. I can go and energize and engage and get Republican votes, and that's what I want to do. And that's what I'm fearful of will happen, is that we're not going to make the effort in order to find people. We're not going to make an effort to be in South Georgia on some farmer's land with a tent and inviting people to come and share why they feel they're a Republican. We need to make an effort to make sure that only citizens are registered to vote. It's extremely difficult to get anybody off the voter rolls. Trust me, I have a challenge meeting tomorrow, and it's not going to be an easy thing to get through. You know, we just need a little more effort, a little more get out of the congestion of the 80,000 and over counties and get into the under 80,000 counties and engage with those folks and find out what they need and find out how we can help them. And instead of just saying, I'm going to train you to do this, say, I'm going to help you. So what do you need help with? I mean, it's kind of like a good salesman. When you go into somewhere, you say, I mean, and you're a banker, so you know, what can I help you with? What are you having a problem with? And that's the problem you try to solve. I've solved lots of problems with the Gwinnett GOP. I've been involved with the Gwinnett. I mean, we had terrible problems a few years ago. The party almost dissolved. I got involved to try to solve that problem, solved it. Um, I've been involved. I've never been a chairman of the party, but I've done all the work of everything. I've organized fundraisers.
Speaking of chairman, I'm sorry, we have just a few minutes left. Sorry. Speaking of chairman, that was the perfect segue into my next question. With the chairman of the state party having so much authority, de jure, the executive committee has authority, but de facto, the chairman basically runs everything, and that's been that way since as long as anyone can remember. So it will almost certainly continue in that direction. That being said, you've got two candidates running for chairman.
Mhm.
So let's take a fork in the road. It's June 8th. The convention, it's a Sunday. The convention's over. And now one of these two men have been elected. Let's just go alphabetically. David Cross is now the state party chair. How does that affect, what do you do with the realities of the differences between these two men? What do you do next as first vice chair under this new reality?
Honestly, Brent, it doesn't matter whether it's David Cross or it's Josh McCoon. I have the ability to work. I've worked for over 12 years with Democrats in Gwinnett County, getting things done for the county in the elections. I can do the same thing with a Josh McCoon or a David Cross. We're going to sit down at the table. We're going to discuss. There's going to have to be some kind of a game plan of how we're going to approach the 26th election. I will give my ideas. They will give their ideas. We will compromise, come to some type of compromise of what we can do together. I will work with whomever, even if you had jumped in the race, Brant, I will work with whomever to get Georgia to stay red. We will
You-
do what needs to be done. It doesn't matter if we have
I
one
get
approach or another approach.
I get that. Not to cut you off, but I mean, just being since this is a candid conversation, and we don't want to just give canned answers. Josh and David are very different men. They've presented very different visions. They have different styles. They have different style supporters. And as far as compromise, as we've seen in the last 2 years, there isn't so much compromise as can you work well with the chairman because in the sense there isn't a compromise. If he decides to ignore you, you're ignored. And there's really not much you can do about it other than complain on social media. So it's not so much
No, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. I mean, if I don't have a job to do, I will create a job for me to do. I
no,
will
what I mean
I
is if
will
he
tell
doesn't
the
listen to you,
chairman what I'm going to do because I would never do anything that the
if
chairman
if he doesn't
doesn't
listen
know.
to you, if you don't have a good relationship with the chair, it will be that much harder to do all the things you want to do. And so, since having been a vice chair myself, I know how important it is to maintain a good working relationship with the chair. And so, given the differences between the two candidates, I just want to give you a chance to share about, okay, in this scenario I do this, in that scenario I do that. Like if we have, because each candidate is different.
They are, and I don't know how David Cross would be a chairman because he hasn't been a chairman as second vice chair. I know he's not given a lot of things, if anything, to do. But my personality is such that I will work with whichever direction the chair seems to go. I will tell both of them, both Josh and David, if I don't agree with what they're doing. I will tell them my opinion and I'll tell them why I don't agree or why I would like to go into another direction. If I don't have anything to do, they will know that I'm not happy about not having anything to do. But I'm not a big social media, I don't do podcasts. I'm not going to blast out to the whole state of Georgia that, I hate fish and every time I have to have a lunch with the chairman, he always has fish on the table or whatever. I mean, I'm not that type of person. I'm the type of person that give me a problem, let me solve it, let me work towards it, let's work together to get it done. So
You could be
if it's
low
a more
drama.
conservative, if it's a more conservative, quiet type of chairmanship like Josh McCoon has, I'll figure out how to work with that. If it's a louder, more vibrant, I don't want to say vibrant, but a more controversial type of chairmanship, I'll learn how to work that way to keep Georgia red, period. End of story. I will do what I have to do. Now, I'm older than both of them, so I probably will get out my Italian wooden spoon and every once in a while just threaten them with the wooden spoon. And that's really a joke. I'm not going to hit them with the wooden spoon, maybe. So, but
Well, you live in the same county as David Cross, so geographically you're not that far apart. So,
well,
and,
have
and,
you
and,
been to Gwynet? It takes me an hour to get
and
from my part of Gwynet to his part of Gwynet. So,
yeah, well, yeah, and McCoon lives in Fulton. That's about similar distance. So yeah, about the same distance either way. So in closing, as you're looking forward to the next 2 years, 2 years from now, it's 2027, and you're
mhm.
looking back. What would you like to be able to look back and say that the state party is better off for you having been the vice chair?
I would really like to look back and say, because of my efforts, we have more members in the Georgia GOP. We have more votes for Republicans, and that we've kept the legislature and the constitutional officers of Georgia red and not blue. That's what I would like to do.
A worthy goal if ever there was one. Yeah, where can people find out more about you? Do you have a website,
I
social
do.
media?
I do have a Facebook page. It's Alice OLenick for
That's
Georgia
yeah,
First
that's
Vice Chair. OL,
OLenick.
yes. And I do have a website. Wait a minute. It's on one of these flyers. It's long. It's www. Alice OLenick, no apostrophe in the OLenick, for GAGOP one, the number one VC.net. That's a lot to type, but it's here. It's on my flyer.
Very
So
good. Very, very good. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Alice. I really appreciate you sitting down with us.
thank you, Brant. Thanks for the invite. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.